Sounds aight.
Theoretical framework that was inspired by the world-famous economist John Maynard Keynes. These Keynesian economists were very much concerned with stabilizing unemployment at a very low level. So it seems weird to view inflation as a consequence of too many employment opportunities. However,
You're just wrong,
make sense if you view
objectively,
the rise of all prices simultaneously
undeniably,
as a consequence of overall demand outpacing overall supply. After all, if almost everybody is already employed, you cannot really make more stuff. Or as economists would say, supply is constrained. At the same time, with so many workers employed, demand is at an all-time high. And with overall demand higher than overall supply, it makes sense that prices will go up. However, during the oil crisis of the 1970s, the US experienced double-digit inflation while unemployment reached all-time highs of 7.5%. This rare combination of stagnation and inflation came to be known as stagflation. And I know that many people think that economists are not real scientists, but as should be the case in science, the old Keynesian theory not fitting the data meant that the field was wide open for new challengers. The challengers that initially seemed to come out on top were the monetarists, and their champion was Chicago professor Milton Friedman.
Can you tell what that noise is?
Literal Hitler, guys.
It's the sound of money being printed.
The charismatic professor seemed to have all the answers. According to him, inflation was actually a simple problem.
Now, the first step toward understanding the cause of inflation is to recognize that it is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. It's always and everywhere a result of too much money, of a more rapid increase in the quantity of money than an output. Moreover, in the modern era, the important next step is to recognize that today governments control the quantity of money.
Like the Phillips curve, this theory made intuitive sense. If oil prices rise, that must mean that the value of money is actually going down. The central bank creates money, so if there is inflation, that must mean that the central bank is simply printing too much money. Working in favor of this theory was also that it built on a long intellectual tradition. You see, in the 18th century, famous philosopher and also economist David Hume already imagined a simple economy in which money was basically gold. If the quantity of gold was unexpectedly increased, the only logical consequence is that the value of gold money drops compared to goods. Most economists believe that this is exactly what happened in Europe right after the Spanish discovered silver and gold in South America. A sudden increase in the quantity of money naturally meant higher prices in Europe. What's more, this theory could also explain the Phillips curve relationship between unemployment and inflation. After all, a sudden increase in the quantity of money cannot lead to more production if everyone is already employed. So it would likely just lead to more demand and therefore higher prices. Finally, the monetarists recognized that if the economy was to grow at a steady rate, then money also needed to increase at a steady rate to keep prices stable. So to prevent inflation, the solution would simply be to increase the quantity of money in the economy at some optimal rate. And actually, quite a few central bankers were convinced. For example, in 1979, the Bank set itself a target to increase the broad money supply by 7 to 11%.
I don't even know if I'm starting tomorrow, to be honest.
The UK
is it start August 30th? Or is it early release?
2%, double the target, and that was a bit confusing to the monetarists. So why did this happen? Well, likely because the UK economy of the late 70s was not comparable to a simple gold coin economy. If we look at the composition of the money supply target in the UK in 1979, you will see that less than 11% was created by the central bank. A trend that only got worse since then.
Couldn't we... I don't know why I'm asking this question, chat. Couldn't we hypothesize like barter economies or something that would still theoretically experience inflation due to like the differing demands of different types of goods or services or whatever? Like, not necessarily just due to... Oh, shit. Wait, hold on. Sorry.
In other words, central bankers found out the hard way that instead of living in Friedman's simple economy, they lived in an economy that was dominated by credit money. In modern economies, money is issued as credit, not just by central banks, but primarily by private banks and other financial institutions. And a crucial difference between credit money and gold is that credit money is typically created by banks to make new production possible. For example, in the form of a business loan for a new factory. So sure, a random gold discovery in medieval times may have only increased demand in Europe's economy, but not supply, causing inflation. But a line of credit to build a business will likely lead to more production and demand at the same time. It is therefore less likely to cause all prices to rise. Now, of course, central bankers could get closer to Friedman's imagined economy by taking away this power from financial institutions. They even tried this in the US with the Monetary Control
DK
Act
is
of
actually
1980.
nuts.
However, that failed because financial institutions soon found clever ways around them by creating new forms of credit money. In other words, to enact Friedman's plan, central bankers needed to be willing to basically break the financial system. A system that central banks were created to prevent from collapsing. So yeah, that didn't happen.
Today, government control the quantity of money.
Nope.
But while Friedman's simple money printing theory was not a realistic description of modern economies, he did end up significantly influencing the economists that would come to challenge him. So far it seemed that understanding inflation was more of an art than a science. A bit like investing in an inflationary environment.
I love it when they put the meme music on
In an
things.
inflationary environment. An option that is usually only available to the wealthy. But that is changing thanks to the work of Masterworks, who helped make this video possible. Masterworks' innovation is that they allow anyone to invest in shares of high-value works of art. They have a database on art that's so extensive they're asked by firms like Citi to partner on art market reports. And since their inception, Masterworks has sold 5 paintings with an average net return of 26.8% to their investors. They stress that art has outperformed the S&P 500 as an asset class over the last 26 years by more than double. And perhaps more importantly, they emphasize that art has performed as an inflation hedge. It appreciated at an average of 33% annually the last time inflation was this high, which is higher than gold and real estate during the same period, the traditional inflation hedges. With no end to inflation in sight, demand for masterwork is high, and there is a waitlist. But our viewers can skip it just by clicking the link in the description. So have a look if that sounds interesting. But first, let's get back to the next evolution
Jesus,
of
I'm about to buy some
inflation
art,
theory
guys.
in central banking. So, 1970s inflation had happened despite sky-high unemployment and despite the central bank not directly controlling the money supply. In response, many economists, including Friedman, started wondering if it could be true that just expecting inflation could have actually caused inflation. You see, if workers expect inflation, they might negotiate higher wages at the start of the year. Or if shopkeepers expect higher inflation, they might already adjust their prices for this at the start of the year. But then you might ask, how will people get money to pay for these higher prices? Well, by asking for a bit more credit at private banks, of course. So in this case, just the expectation of higher inflation actually causes higher inflation. Pretty mind-boggling stuff, right? But this then, of course, raises the following question. Why did people expect higher inflation in the 1970s? One hypothesis was that the initial spike in inflation was caused by a huge spike in oil prices. Then, after oil prices had spiked, people just kept expecting high inflation to continue. Economists call this adaptive expectations because people adapt their expectations based on what happened in the past. Alternatively, it could be that people just didn't believe the central bank wanted to control inflation and therefore they expected higher inflation. Economists call these type of expectations forward-looking expectations. And this is where a new group of economists, the New Keynesians, come in. The New Keynesians combine the old...
Somebody said that Maynard Keynes believed in Keynesian economics. Wait, I thought it was called because of that Maynard Keynes guy. Am I?
Defensive.
Is that not true? No, it is. Fuck you. You were trolling me. Off your second here, then.
Keynesian Phillips curve with forward-looking inflation expectations. Their so-called new Keynesian Phillips curve could obviously explain the Phillips curve observation. It could also explain stagflation by stating that in the 70s, the people must have lost trust in the central bank. What's more, the new Keynesians required central banks to control something that they could actually control, the short-term interest rate. So in proper scientific fashion, new Keynesian theory was deemed superior because it was the least inconsistent with the data. The theory implied that to control inflation, central bankers just needed to concern themselves with two things. First, they needed to set the interest rate at the precise rate that keeps unemployment at this level that is not inflationary. This magical rate also became known as R star. Second, to manage expectations, they needed to be seen as credible inflation and deflation fighters. Or as central bankers would say, they needed to keep inflation expectations well anchored.
Inflation expectations are starting to move down to dangerously low levels. They've moved up a bit, but they're still pretty well anchored.
We stress the importance of having inflation expectations well anchored at 2%.
And for a while, this seemed to work. Wherever central bankers adopted this framework, inflation just seemed to go down. In fact, it seemed to work so well that new Keynesians came to dominate the economics profession. And in their models, the non-inflationary interest rate would not just stabilize inflation, it would basically stabilize the entire economy. Yeah, in 2007, new Keynesian economists genuinely seemed to believe that they had solved all the major mysteries of macroeconomics. But then this happened.
Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate. We're red everywhere, essentially, down by 4-5%.
The meme music again, dude. Bam! God, it's so fucking base.
Now, it is true that new Keynesian theory initially only got into trouble because it didn't predict the great financial crisis, but soon inflation would start to act funny as well. You see, central bankers were communicating that they wanted more inflation.
Inflation is very, very low, which you think is a good thing, and normally is a good thing. But we're getting awfully close to the range where prices would actually start falling.
Falling prices lead to falling wages. It lets the steam out of the economy, and you start spiraling downward.
Exactly.
What's more, both interest rates and unemployment were low. And so it now makes sense that central bank economists kept expecting inflation to go up, even though it didn't. Smelling blood, this is when both a new inflation theories started popping up and old inflation theories started coming back into vogue. On the one hand, you saw the return of the monetarist spirit, and some of these economists started arguing that with central banks creating so much new money, there had to be inflation somewhere, even if it couldn't be found in the official statistics.
The government's reporting 7% on headline inflation, and you're saying we're at 15%?
Other monetarists would
top secret
inflation. Inflation hadn't appeared yet, but would soon appear.
If the Fed is really trying to increase inflation from 1.5 to 2, they're going to overshoot by a landslide.
In the other corner, you saw the rise of more government-centric theories. For example, Warren Mosler's modern monetary theory states that prices paid by the government.
We've debated this guy on stream. Rage Pope had an argument with him. Remember Mosler?
When it spends, sets the price level. It does so by stabilizing wages through both government spending at current prices and monetary policy. Another contender is Chicago professor Cochrane's fiscal theory of the price level. Cochrane argues that the price level is determined by the present value of all future government surpluses. Finally, the new Keynesians are actively updating their theory by also emphasizing a larger role for government spending in their models. This could indeed explain the low inflation levels after the great financial crisis. Since while central banks were stimulating like crazy, governments were relatively conservative in their spending. But then, as if it was a final blow, inflation accelerating rapidly after the pandemic was again not foreseen by the new Keynesian economists employed by the central banks. After all, employment was not lower than it was before the pandemic, and inflation expectations seemed to be well anchored. Some things that had actually changed was that there had been simultaneously big government stimulus in the US, several massive blows to supply chains, and a big demand shift from the service sector to the goods sector. At the same time, while wages remained subdued, corporate profits soared. Therefore, it made sense that other economists such as Marxist and post-Keynesians joined the fight with theories ranging from price gouging to pure cost push inflation. And so it seems that we're back to square one. The next theory of inflation needs to be able to explain the Phillips curve of the 60s, 70s stagflation, 90s and 2000s steady inflation, the 2010's lack of inflation and the post-pandemic inflation spike.
Good luck.
Which theory will be victorious and give Fed Chairman Jerome Powell renewed confidence in his ability to understand inflation?
Find shelter.
Well, personally, I don't expect Cleveland's monetarists to get their revenge just yet. To do so, they would need to explain why inflation remained relatively low in the previous decades while the money supply exploded. They would also need to explain why in regions with very activist central banks, such as Europe and Japan, inflation was relatively low. And finally, they would need to incorporate private credit money into their framework somehow to explain why the central bank doesn't directly control the money supply. That being said, I also think that the new Keynesians are genuinely in trouble. Sure, their strict mathematical models can accommodate plenty of new assumptions to explain each of these inflation episodes individually, but I don't think they can fit in enough new equations to be able to explain all of them at the same time while keeping their models nice and elegant. The theories that focus on corporate profits are a nice counterweight to the Phillips curve theories. However, I don't think that corporate profits can explain inflation in all of these other periods. Finally, I'm eager to learn more about the government-focused theories and hope to speak to some of these authors on my second channel soon. But in the end, I think that all of these theories are basically wrong. And I also think that all of these theories are
basically right.
Correct.
Good
There are
one.
just multiple ways that inflation can come about in our super complex economy. In some cases, inflation will be generated by excessive money printing, perhaps in response to outside pressure. In other cases, a big supply-side disruption might generate higher prices. This might then lead to higher inflation expectations. In both cases, extra credit money creation by private banks then follows as a consequence of these higher prices.
Real science, by the way,
Or
guys.
it could be that because of globalization, there are now more workers, suppressing wages and leading to deflation. In other words, just like political scientists will never be able to come up with a simple theory of war, economists will never be able to come up with a simple theory of inflation. On the bright side, if you remember government spending, money printing, exploitations, and supply-side disruptions as possible causes of inflation, you can still make useful predictions as an economist. For example, a war will likely be inflationary due to cost pressures, government spending, and demand shifts. On the other hand, interest rate hikes will likely be deflationary because they kill demand. These are still useful economic predictions. You can perhaps compare this to how a doctor can predict that smoking will likely cause cancer, but cannot tell you when exactly this cancer will
Holy
strike,
shit, was
or
that Elon
with
Musk
complete
smoking
certainty
weed?
that you will
What?
get cancer if you smoke. But hey, that's just my take on the matter, made possible by my awesome patrons and
Watch your
members.
step.
Who do you think has the best theory of inflation? Let me know in the
Stay
comments.
away from
And if you're not
lions.
sure yet, consider watching this video over here on the history of credit money in Europe, or this video over here on why central bankers might not be as much in control as they would like to think.
Bro, nice free spring.
Empower. This video is sponsored.
Stay away from lions.
Oh, can you explain inflation to me? Yeah, basically inflation is this thing that I can give you a perfect explanation for, but in 5 years it's not going to fit at all, and we're going to look for a new one. So there you go.
Shockwave. Shockwave. Dispel.
Oh!
Empower.
Rate this sync.
AOE incoming.
Bup.
I bet that she knows you don't, 'cause you play it uptown, 'cause together. I bet you even tell her how you love her. In between the chorus and the verse. No, you can take your I bet that she.
Nice try, guy. What? Italics. You're on, dude. You made it. You made it
I did.
to the big leagues. What do you got for us?
AOE incoming.
Awesome. I wanted to talk to you about your red pill prescription to counter the red pill narrative, since you're more narrative driven. Yeah, so I think one of the stumbling blocks that we'll probably continue to run into is people are going to tell you, well, you know, you might not like the sort of anti-women incel explanation that red pill believers provide, but they might not see you as a credible messenger of an alternative, right? So I guess to lay a foundation, what would your counter narratives be for red pill believers?
I think the thing that I need to work the hardest on figuring out is I need to figure out what the fuck people want in relationships. Because, like, it might actually be that red pill stuff is perfectly good for red pill people, but, like, I just wouldn't want it, so I'm not sure. Like, yeah. Like, when I listen to Fresh and Fit talk about what they want from relationships, I don't think they should follow any of my advice. Because it sounds like what they're looking for in women is way fucking different than what I look for in women. So figuring that out is actually pretty difficult. I'm not really sure, actually. It's something I have to think more about. Like when it was funny because there was a moment on that show where they described their like perfect woman, and they described like the worst type of women, and those explanations were 180 completely from me. Like they're saying like, I don't like these bitchy women. They're like these girl bosses they're bitches. They blah blah blah. Like that's my ideal. That's exactly the type of woman I like. I want somebody that's a girl boss. I want somebody that's kind of an asshole. I want somebody that's like has a very aggressive personality. And then they talk about like, you know, I want like a good servant, or somebody that's like this kind of like quieter, like takes command of me. I don't respect women like that. I can't fuck with women like that. I hate it.
What's your step?
But if it is the case that the majority of the audience is looking for that type of girl, I don't know, that maybe like red pill shit maybe is like the way, maybe it's a better way to go. I don't know. That's something I actually have to think more about. I'll probably try to think more about that before my show on the first on Friday.
Well, it makes it super hard to argue with them, right? Because if we're on the anti-red pill arc, but we don't have a good alternative for these guys who are, I don't know. There's another foundational question I want to ask you. Who do you think falls for the red pill most often? Like what demographic?
Well, the thing is, I would imagine that like the red pill people that fall for it are probably the people that have never had relationships before, so they actually don't even know what they want. That'd be my guess, but it's hard to truly know.
I was gonna say probably like 18 to 22, like probably incel, primarily white, maybe males.
Sure.
That's my guess. I don't know if that's true, but if that's the case, you know, I'm trying to come up with a narrative that I could give because I was that, you know, 5-6 years ago, and dating apps were fucking rough,
brutal.
Dude.
Yeah.
They're hard. My best answer to red pillars is like you just gotta keep churning through it. Like you gotta keep sending messages, trying new people. You gotta go on a lot of awkward first dates, and I think for a lot of people they just give up. Sure. And sometimes it's hard to give them a better answer besides, it sucks, dude.
And it's hard because like for women, if you have one or two bad experiences with men, it's like, oh, I understand you're traumatized, you need therapy, like it's okay, like you can blah blah blah. But for men, it's like you're expected to have 30 bad experiences. Like that's just part of being a man. Get over it. Like you have to have a bad experience. You have to get rejected 20-30 times, and it's like, okay, well, Jesus Christ, like that's a little bit of an unequal expectation there, my dude. But yeah, so it's rough.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys are going in and they want this like really open-minded girl who's also a virgin, but also is good in bed, but also is willing to be really loyal to them. It's just like, I feel like it's the, I don't know, you've probably heard the Bo Burnham song about love, like, lower your expectations. It's that, you know, it's like people have these insane expectations, and yet they go into the dating market thinking that there's just, like, nobody out there for them. And it seems kind of obvious to me what the disconnect is sometimes.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I think having that counter narrative is like super important, especially when you go on Fresh and Fit the second time with Erudite. Because, you know, they're probably going to ask you like, all right, well, you don't like what we have to say, but, you know, you're also kind of living a straddle position yourself with your, you know, open marriage, open relationship.
Yeah, I always have to say though,
that,
like that, like my, like, and I say this a million times, but even my own retarded fucking subreddit doesn't seem to listen to me or take into any consideration what I say, which is annoying. But like, I don't recommend my lifestyle for anybody. But my lifestyle is exceptional in every single way. Like, I'm an incredibly online figure. Like, my life is insane in a million different ways. Like, I don't recommend any part of my lifestyle to anybody. But people will see like, oh well, Destiny does all of this and this. How can he possibly talk about that or that? And it's like, that's, I don't recommend what I do to anybody else. Like, I know my lifestyle is fucking crazy. You seem to be the one that isn't aware that I'm aware of that. Like, yeah, so it's annoying. But
yeah, but that makes your job even harder.
Yeah, I know.
Now your credibility as the messenger is even worse because they're like, well, you know, you're not even living
you don't
the
practice
lifestyle.
what you preach. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think that's going to be your biggest stumbling block. And I'm curious to see what you come up with when you do come up with a narrative for that. Because I personally agree that like we probably should be fighting against the red pill. I personally am pretty disgusted by that mindset. But at the same time, you know, if we don't have an alternative, you know.
Yeah, it's always important to have an alternative narrative. Otherwise, you're just screaming into the abyss or whatever.
Yeah, that was the main thing. Also, please make a jetpack in Factorio. It's so nice.
It doesn't even move that much faster. I already have a jetpack on my suit.
If you put like 5 in there, you move super fast.
I have my fucking grapple hook. Why the fuck do I need a...
Because you fly over all obstacles, you move super fast.
Bruh.
Watch your...
Dude, I'm...
Bra moment. I'm having a bra moment right now.
Alright, that's all I had, man. Thanks for talking.
Have fun.
Run out. Watch your... Run.
What's up?
Gotta beat this right now. How's it going?
Going great. How you going?
Good, good. Oh shit, you're actually kind of quiet for me. Does my
No way, bro. What the fuck? No way.
Good job. It's great.
Yeah, because my voice sounded like shit.
Why am I DCing like that, bro? That's so fucking ass.
You wanted to go over the fascism, authoritarianism, Trump thing again.
Come on.
There's that. I mean, it's a couple things. I want to talk to you about the Fuentes, Mr. Girl shit a little bit. And then you also seem to have a couple more questions about like history that you maybe wanted me to flesh out for you last time we talked.
Maybe, yeah.
What was that? And I can't even reconnect.
I mean, with the so the reason why I would say Trump isn't a fascist, like I was saying in the email.
Yeah. I just want to know, especially after the Mr. Girl thing, I'm super burned on this convo. The way that you can talk as much as you want about this, but the way it's probably going to end, I'm probably going to say, I actually don't give a fuck. I imagine you and I probably agree 100% on what his policies are and what definition we want to use. Blah, blah. I don't care that much, but go for it. I don't know if you were the one that emailed me this, and then also wanted to come on and talk again, or somebody else emailed me. But I think
that was probably me.
It might have been you that said like, well, fascism tends to have like a strong focus on like traditionalism or whatever. Was this you or was this somebody different?
Yeah, it's like it sounds kind of like the email I sent you.
Yeah,
It's a weird, like traditional, but it's both modernist and anti-modernist at the same time because you'll have people that are like calling for a return to an idealized past, but they do it through like modern or through an embracing of like modern technology. Like for example, in fascist Italy, you know, they're calling back to like Mussolini's calling back to the greatness of Rome and rebuilding the Roman Empire. But there's also like the cult. There's like also this thing of like the cult of the automobile. So there was like super huge interest in like modern technology. There's this really famous air show that happened in Chicago where the Italian Air Force showed up to like wow people about like the glory of fascism, and they showed up with like 300 modern airplanes. So it's just weird, modern and not modern thing. Yeah, I mean, like I feel you. If you're burnt out on the conversation, something we can do another time. I think I agree with you when it comes to we agree that Trump is bad, but whether or not the term fascism is Which I think is kind of the problem that came up with the.
Run out.
To be very honest with you, I missed the last night's.
That's good. You didn't miss anything of value. So
I
the
was-
main
I was
problem, the scariest thing for me when it comes to fascism, and the reason why I'm worried about terms, really, honestly, what I'm usually talking about, what I'm usually getting at, is I'm usually getting at liberalism versus illiberalism, and like illiberalism, or more specifically like anti-democratic stuff. That's like the stuff that I'm really worried about. That's what spooks me, for a variety of reasons. So when I feel like I'm communicating with people that are very quick to cast aside democratic norms, that it opens you up to a world of scary things. So like Trump undermining the vote, that's really scary to me. I don't like that. Yeah, but I'm probably just stop using fascism and Nazi altogether because it seems to like tilt the fuck out of everybody everywhere. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's because, you know, like fascism, authoritarianism, communism, Nazism, so many of these terms have been just, even like racism, sexism,
Yeah.
like homophobia, like so many of these terms have just been completely brutalized colloquially. They're like almost useless. And so like as someone who's like academically interested in them, makes me want to rip my hair out. Be like, no, these things actually have fucking meanings and you're using them wrong. Stop ruining my fucking area of study, you assholes.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Sure.
I would say that like it's accurate for Fuentes. Like he definitely strikes me as like a fascist.
Oh,
like
sure.
fully, you take apart his ideology.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's the weird thing with Mr. Girl. Because like I watched, he had like a call-in show that he titled Nazism. So I was like, okay, this might be interesting. And he has, just listening to him try to define how he describes fascism or Nazism. Like he's just describing it.
Dispel.
He doesn't. I know
Shockwave.
this wordplay again, but it doesn't seem very. Like he was talking about. He basically was talking about a fascist is like an illiberal person, similar to what we just described.
Yeah.
But it's like
How
no,
much-
there's specific.
Bro, do we have to do
peculiarities
that,
like,
bro?
It's an ideology that has like motivating factors that are that make it a specific, unique thing, not this kind of vague like one party
Shockwave.
rule. There's a leader, democracy bad. Like that's just an
Dispel.
authoritarian system.
Yeah.
That was kind of it. I mean, I get that. I imagine talking about this for the 30th time is not what you want to do right now. So
Yeah.
I can always step out unless you had like you said you had a couple of might have had a couple of questions about like German.
Dispel. Shockwave.
If you're not interested, you're not interested.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Alright,
Maybe in the
cool,
future,
man,
if,
no
if any pops up, you want to top one and scream at me, okay?
Yeah, I'll go back to shit posting in the Twitch chat channels.
Dispel.
Oh
What?
no.
Yeah. Hello.
How you doing?
Great.
Shockwave.
Alright, so I read and watch a lot of TV shows, and I feel like lately a lot of the trends in the way that it's going is people are just like willing to accept poor writing or in favor of like cool scenes that like, oh, this was so hype. And but like whenever I try and bring up problems with anything, people are just like, oh no, you're a pessimist, you're like just a negative person. It's like, no, like I want to critique something that people enjoy, but you can't critique anything without anybody being like, oh, you're just negative.
I don't know. What, are you just asking me if?
Kind of just like, yeah, I'm kind of just asking what you think of the current form of writing and narratives in like media at the moment.
Well, that's a really fucking broad
Zaki.
question. There's probably some media that I like. There's probably some media I don't like. Sometimes when certain things are cool, people soy out even if they're dumb. But I mean, like,
Well, like the current one I would use as an example is probably like the biggest one is the superhero shit.
Mhm.
Is like it's the big.
yeah, I love
the big,
superheroes, so be careful.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Actually, can I grill you on that?
Sure, I guess.
Have you watched a lot of the latest, like Marvel and all the DC and shit?
Latest stuff? No. Why? What have I missed?
They haven't watched like anything past Shang-Chi? Or
No, I didn't even watch that one. Why? What's going on?
they've just kind of.
Gotten dog shit.
I wouldn't say dog shit. I feel like they're losing a lot of what made them. I'm saying Morbius. Don't really chat. they're losing a lot of what made them like special, and the build up to each later movie that progressed a story, and they're kind of just like losing form of what created the original series in favor of
Can you give me like
big scenes, big moments.
Yeah, give me like an example. What do you mean by that?
Actually, a good example would be the latest Thor one. Did you watch that movie?
Nope. Why was it bad?
It was atrocious. It was absolutely atrocious. It was, they made Thor Ragnarok again, but they took everything they thought everybody liked about Thor Ragnarok and dialed it up to 11, and that was just the humor.
Okay.
They undercut every scene in that movie with a terrible joke that did not need to be there. I think if they got rid of 70% of the humor in that movie, it actually would have been, you know, I would say at least 50% better.
Okay.
It's just completely undercut everything.
Gotcha. I wish I would have watched
There's an
it now.
entire scene. There's an entire scene where these people have been kidnapped, and their children have been kidnapped, and they're making jokes on a boat about how, like, oh, I need to come up with a cool name for my entry. It's like, is this necessary? Like, kids have been kidnapped, and you're chasing a guy who is trying to kill all gods, and you're like, oh, but my entrance line needs to be cool.
Okay. That sounds bad, I guess. I haven't seen it, so it's hard for me to say, I guess. That's my bad, but...
It's just, yeah, they've undercut a lot of storytelling with things that things that they think people want to hear. And everybody's saying slugs to me, so I'm just gonna fuck off because fuck you guys.
You're gonna let chat bully you out?
Well, they already pissed me off by making the Aussie jokes that they always make, so... they do it every fucking time, and I get like unimaginably annoyed just because you guys once said "arnar," now they can't stop copying you.
Listen, dude. Watch out for that H2O, okay? Thanks for the
They're a bunch of sheep, bro.
Yeah. Thanks for the call, buddy. I appreciate it, okay?
No problem.
Be careful.
Bye.
Killand. What you got? Oh, you're just gonna come in here and not say anything. Ooh, you're gonna keep the mic muted. You're gonna fuck my whole flow up. Oh, hello?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, your mic is blown the fuck out.
Okay. You can turn it down some?
Yeah, like 90%.
How's that?
Turn it up like 20%, but your shit is fucked, my friend.
How about now?
Yeah, it's okay. What do you got?
Okay. You've been getting piled on the last few days about platforming Nick Fuentes or platforming a conservative. Period.
Yeah.
I just want to come on and say, I'm a conservative, more center right now than I have ever been in my life.
Okay. More center right as in more center than you ever have been, or more right than you ever have been?
More center.
Okay, gotcha.
More center.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's based mostly because of you, right? So I've been watching you for about 3 or 4 years now. I can't remember who it was you were debating at the time. It was another conservative. I thought, I'm gonna go check him out. So I started watching a lot of your videos, watching your streams, things of that nature. And I'm still, mostly conservative on the fiscal side, but I'm way more socially liberal than I ever have been in my entire life. And I attribute a lot of that to you. I'm your typical mid 40s white guy, fairly wealthy. And I used to
think Midwest, or where are you from?
I'm in the Midwest.
Okay.
I'm in Kentucky.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So, growing up, I was really strong. I was Catholic, went to Catholic school, everything like that. So brought up around religion, and so my whole family was conservative. They're all Republicans, that type of thing. And so, just my views have changed a lot.
Sure. Okay.
Over the years, and so I just want to encourage you. I think you're uniquely positioned to talk to both sides. I think that it's very important that we talk to each other. That's not going on nowadays, and I think that's a big reason for the divide that we have. And we have so many people that are in echo chambers, right? They only hear from the people that they agree with, and that's all they care to hear about. They block them on Twitter, they block them on Facebook. I mean, I've seen people actually lose friends that they've had for 20 or 30 years just because of different political views.
Yeah.
Right? So I just believe what you're doing is correct. I think there needs to be dialogue, even to the extremes on each end, the right and the left. We've got to bring these people more towards the center and start having discussions about, the issues that we're having. And so I just want to encourage you to keep doing that. I know you're getting shit on. I've seen you getting shit on for the last 3-4 days. Mr. Girl was really unhappy about it. I just think he's whining. He's just.
I mean, they have like legitimate criticism, but yeah, I wouldn't say I'm getting shit. I'm getting like good pushback. That's fine.
Yeah, there are some legitimate concerns, right? But do we really think Nick Fuentes is going to become a dictator and kill all the Jews?
Well,
honestly,
not, but probably not. But I think even Mr. Girl admitted that. He's like, probably chances of that are pretty low. So.
Yeah. Anyway, I just you haven't been hearing anybody from my side, so I thought I would come on. I'm like I said, I've never called into anywhere ever, so I'm a little nervous, but just some encouragement. Appreciate it. Keep it up, and thank you.
Cool. Well, thanks. I appreciate it, mate.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Answer. What you got?
Yeah, what's good? Hold up, let me read this shit. So I'm just wondering, because I followed you for a while. Your takes on music, especially like popular music, they're so bad. I don't know what's going on, man.
What do you? Which one are you upset about? Tell me.
Well, first we can start on the Kanye front. The Kanye front is so bad.
Oh shit! Hold on, let me understand real quick. Hold on, wait.
Don't ask if I'm under 20. Don't ask if I'm under 20. Yeah, I'm 26. All right, Doc. I was around.
26.
I was around.
And you like post fucking like
yeah,
Yee shit?
Yeah.
Oh no! Wow. Okay, so you're just a lost soul.
Wait, you mean Ye? Like the 2018 album?
Yeah. Oh god.
Look, okay, I'm not gonna say by and large all of it's great. I'm not gonna say all of it's great, but there are some things where you're like, ooh, that's kind of like flash in the pan. That's what he used to look like. Like even on Donda.
Yeah, but like listen to what you're saying. You're like, well, some of the stuff I can listen to. You're like, oh, that used to be. It sounds kind of like when it used to be good.
I don't think any of it's bad. No, I don't think any of it's like, oh, okay, Jesus is King is bad, but I don't think all of it's bad. I just don't think it's like the same style as he used to make. He's obviously making shit for Zoomers. That's like the goal. But I think there's still some songs within all that where you're like, okay, this is him doing his old thing. Even in the shit he makes right now, it's still some of the old.
Okay.
So
but
yeah,
all
no.
of his stuff isn't 100% trash. Okay, thank you for that. Okay.
I mean, I think it's still good. It's just I don't think you'll ever get any of the Zoomer music. You'll just be like, okay, it's the 808. You'll close it out. You'll be like, all right, I heard the 808. I heard the man rap. Okay, close it out. Like I feel like that's like your instant instinct. As soon as you hear the big booming beat, you're like, all right, I'm out of here. I accept that. You're lost. You'll never enjoy Zoomer music. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I'm okay with that, but I just
4,
you could still listen to some of it and be like,
2,
all right, this is what he used to look like. Have you listened to The Life of Pablo like front to back, and you're like, I'm giving this an honest chance?
Yeah, I've listened to
an honest chance.
That was one that had like the one good song. Like, was it Blood on the Leaves or whatever?
I think you like Ultralight Beam.
Oh, Ultralight Beam is a good song. That was the one like good song.
What about Fade? You didn't like Fade?
I have
that
to
was
go
like
back and listen. Every other song on that album was trash, so I have to go back and listen to it again to dig out why something was bad. But
all right, regardless, I'm just saying. Because every time I hear you talk about Kanye, like he was so bad, but now, I mean, he was so good, but now he's just so bad. I mean, I think he just moved into a different style. We could agree this year. I can accept you don't like that style because it's Zoomer music, but no, just in general, like you're like, music today sucks, it's awful, all this shit, and it's like, well, how much do you listen to outside of, what chat links you? Like, do you ever search shit out? I don't even know.
I'm joking about music.
Just fucking
I know you're not.
I do not
I'm
appreciate
aware that you're not. It's not gonna be your full like perfect position, but yeah. But no, just I was just curious because every time I hear you talk about popular music, it seems like you don't really listen to it, or you have like 2 songs, and you're like, no, I'm good. I don't need to listen to it. If you're looking for shit ever, you should look in. J. Cole has Dreamville, which is like his label. There's a bunch of people under it. They definitely fit your style of shit. They're like J.I.D., Earth King, all these people, they kind of fit your style of like the bigger, like prettier sounding shit, you know what I mean? Close to the Kanye type music. So anyway, yeah, I was just curious. I can do that, everybody.
Oh, I'm gonna fucking actually have an aneurysm right now. So fucking stupid.
This shit to space.
Here's actually just making a dog shit. Holy crap.
Watch your step.
No! I'm so
Power recording here for the
over
7th time
this.
this week. What's up?
You bastard. I have not. I've been restrained from not coming back in. But they are being tier 4, so gotta cash in.
True.
So a big one was your contextual language arc. I've had a full swing. At first, kinda disagreed, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized, yeah, you are right. Context kind of makes it. The thing that convinced me was examples. And I think everyone will kind of agree, context by which you say a word gives it the definition. I think you have to hammer home those examples to get that across.
Act like a fucking dumb fuck.
Yeah, basically like the Nazi thing too. I will call Nick a Nazi when I'm like exaggerating his beliefs because they're not entirely aligned with that. But Mr. Girl feels very different, way more condemnation-y. I don't feel comfortable saying that in front of him, basically.
Sure.
So,
Empowered. Anything else?
Last one is I'm going to do a little bit more political activist stuff. I want to actually get involved in the community. What's one big thing you find to be the biggest issue in general political discourse if you could work to fix it?
Probably people talking to each other that disagree with each other. The more politically polarized people are, the less they talk to each other. Bridging that gap seems to be the most important thing right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would probably say so. I kind of want to try to reflect that in some stuff. So hopefully I can hear that message.
Well, good luck.
Yep. Also, give us BTTV back. Please. YouTube chat, we want more emotes. You gave it to us, you took it away.
I'll work on that, okay? Hootie, what's up? Going once. Going twice. Oh no. Really, dude. Really.
Stop attacking. Safe
Rain, you're up.
Hey man, how's it going?
Great, how's it going?
Good.
Cool.
Are there any video games you're looking forward to?
Nope. I'm on a Factorio space exploration binge now.
Nothing? No, like, autism simulators coming up?
Nope.
Okay. I have a content idea. Since you like D&D, would you be willing to play Baldur's Gate 3 co-op with Moot? Or maybe Dan?
Maybe. I have a friend that really likes that game, and I played it a little bit a long time ago, and I wanted to play more, but it's a really slow game. And it's that's a stream destroyer game because it's so slow. If Moot and Dan wanted to play, maybe. It would just be a matter of if they were interested. I don't think Dan would be interested in that type of game. Moot might be.
Yeah.
But
I think any co-op game. Have you played Divinity 2?
Yeah, I did. It was okay.
Okay. That's all I wanted to say. By the way, play Valorant with Lily or I'm subbing.
Go. Splashmock.
Whoa! Hello.
Hello. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank God. All right. Music question,
Oh
specifically.
my God, yes.
So I was mostly curious about what appeals to you most about piano as a fellow piano player.
What
It's kind of
appeals?
broad. Yeah,
Well, I mean, you're gonna know all these answers. One is the ability to play unaccompanied is awesome, coming from somebody that majored in playing a horn, saxophone. Yeah, being able to play unaccompanied is just the fucking best. Number one. Number two is a little of a cheat, and if you want to get really anal, it's not technically true, but the idea that like your tone is your tone, you can argue as a musician, has to do with like your actual playing, the touch, your phrasing, and everything. But like a really good piano always sounds really good. When you look at horns, a professional player or a college level player will sound better on a $500 saxophone than a high school player on a $5,000 saxophone, because your embouchure and your tone, your embouchure really is so important in terms of like production of good tone. And that's true of even things like guitars. A really good guitar player can grab a Walmart guitar and sound better than a mediocre one or a middling one on a more expensive setup. But for piano, as long as you kind of know how to play, you know, a C chord is a C chord. Sounds good. So I like that aspect too. Those are probably the two things that I appreciate the most about piano. The fact that you can play your own accompaniment and it's very flexible and versatile in terms of like range, and then the fact that like there's not as much work that goes into like building a proper embouchure and everything for it too.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's generally my opinion as well. Do you know what percussive piano is?
I've heard of that. I've heard the term percussive piano and prepared piano. Is this when you take a piano, you open it up, and you start attaching different gizmos and gadgets to the strings, so that anytime you hit the hammers are lifted and hit the key, it creates like different types of noises, basically?
No. I would call that being fancy, honestly.
Okay, I've heard of it called prepared piano, and I thought I'd heard percussive piano, but okay, sorry. What are you talking about? Go.
Yeah, no, percussive piano is a style of playing where you completely drop like the aspect of piano playing, which is, you know, because piano is always kind of like the center. It's kind of like the master of the universe in many ways, because you can play literally any range, multiple ranges at the same time. Percussive piano is where it basically just becomes just a rhythm section percussive instrument. So like salsa, for instance, you play basically the same sort of kind of arpeggios and shit over and over again. Do you think that kind of piano playing, sorry, actually, what I meant to ask there was like, what do you think about like kind of like salsa and these kinds of genres that kind of I would say reduce the kind of like possibilities that you have with piano.
I mean, the piano is such a versatile instrument. It's going to serve different roles in different ensembles. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's kind of like a guitar, right? Like you can argue that like learning to play rhythm guitar is a totally different thing than learning how to play lead guitar. Like it's almost like a totally different instrument. Yeah. So like piano can sometimes you can just do like have you heard of the term like comping?
Yes.
Yeah, you can like be like an accompaniment, just like comp a little bit, or you can be like you're playing melodies or whatever. Like there's like different functions that a piano can fill. I think it's fine. I don't think there's anything like one is like better or worse. It's just like different.
No, yeah, I don't think any is better or worse either. It's just that it's just interesting to explore as a piano player, because I've been learning by myself for a long time now, and I've gotten used to sort of like the freedom. And now that I've been like kind of like invited to play in bands and stuff, it's just like it feels like there's a whole other world to learn.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, also, have you ever heard of David Bennett piano?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's a cool YouTube channel. He breaks down like chord progressions, things like that, and like why they work, why they invoke certain emotions, things like that. I would totally check that out, because I think he's helped me like generate a bunch of ideas, especially in terms of improv. It just kind of adds like more colors on the color palette, you know, like whatever that thing artist holds.